In this video, we're going to create a simple start menu in Unity. This will be the first video focused on UI, but there's going to be a lot more in the future for different types of menus, like inventory and pause menus, stuff like that. By the time you watch this, they might already be there. But anyways, let's go ahead and start making our start menu. Now, first thing I want to mention is that Unity UI is at a completely different scale than everything else in your game. The start menu is not going to have anything else in it, but I'll show you what I mean. If I add a little square to my game here, then I start making UI. The UI is actually going to be a lot bigger than everything else. And to show you that, let's start making the UI. I'll keep the square here for reference, but you don't have to have a square, obviously. Click plus, and then UI canvas. This will create the canvas. The canvas is the object that all UI elements have to be childed to. And to child something means you drag something onto it, or when making it in the first place, instead of clicking this plus button here, you actually right click the object and then add it from there. So the canvas is really big, like I mentioned, so let's zoom out so we can see the whole thing. You can see it's huge. Our guy here looks normal, but anything we put in our canvas, like in our UI, has to be relative to this rectangle, not the camera's box here. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to right click the canvas and do UI. We'll do text mesh pro. If you don't already have text mesh pro imported, like I don't, you have to click the import TMP essentials button, which will import some scripts and typefaces that TMP needs, or text mesh pro. It's only pretty quick. My text here actually was already automatically scaled for the canvas here, and we'll see that since it's in the middle of the canvas, it's in the middle of my screen. And it's a lot bigger than the square down here. Also, I keep scrolling in and out to get to things. That's pretty inefficient. On the left side here, you can double click any object to zoom in on it. Pretty helpful when you're moving around the scene a lot. Let's get rid of the square, we don't need it anymore. But focusing on the canvas again, if I move this text to the top left, you'll see it moves to the top left of the game window. If I move it to the bottom right, it moves to the bottom right of the game window. We're gonna have a few pieces of text here. We're going to have our game's name, which could also be an image and probably should be an image since your logo hopefully is more than just the words of your game. It's actually got art and stuff like that, or at least it's just some custom picture. And then we're going to have a start button and a quit button. We could also do settings and stuff like that, but I'll leave that to a separate video because that is well out of the scope for this video. Before we start typing it, let's rename this object to title. And then I'm just going to copy and paste title and rename this one to start and this one to quit. So now we have 3 text objects childed to our canvas: title, start, and quit. With title selected, I'm going to move it toward the middle here, and I'm going to try and line it up here. Now, trying to get it exactly in the middle with the mouse is not really easy. I guess I was only 1 pixel off, but on the right side here, you have a rect transform. This is different than a regular transform. Whenever you create an object, it gives it a transform. It has position, has a rotation, has a scale. A rect transform is different because the canvas doesn't work the same as the regular scene. Again, the canvas is huge. The canvas also has different requirements. For example, you could place the player at 0, 0, like the beginning of the game, the middle of the map or whatever, and it just logically makes sense. The canvas is a little bit different because do you want your element to be aligned to the left? Do you want it aligned to the right? Do you want it to stretch between the middle and the first quarter half of the screen, for example, or the first quarter part of the screen? Like, there's a lot of things your UI might be able to do in order to make it responsive and work on multiple screen sizes. So the rect transform has a lot of different settings. It has the position X and position Y that are very similar to regular transforms, and it has a width and a height, which are very similar to regular transform scale. But it also has these anchors. Also, it has rotation here, just a regular transform. And it has a scale, which is separate than the width and the height. I recommend not changing the scale and just only changing width and height. Anyways, the anchor is here, what makes it a little bit different. I want my title to stretch out all the way from left to the right. So what I'm going to do is set the minimum X anchor to 0 and the maximum X anchor to 1. 0 is the lowest possible value you can use, and 1 is the highest possible value. If you noticed, there are these little like anchor like markers here that moved a little bit when I did that. Left and right are still their old, like they got changed when I did that. So I'm gonna set this to 0 and this to 0. And you'll see the text box spans the whole width of the screen now. The text is still not in a good spot though. I want to move it higher for the title. So for the anchor min max, for the min I'll say 0.6 for the Y, and for the max I'll say 0.8. And then change the top offset and bottom offset to 0. And you'll see now that this yellow box is where the title is going to be. I'm going to hide start quick because they're kind of distracting. Anyways, title here. We have a bunch of Text Mesh Pro settings that we're going to go over. We have the font that's being used. And by the way, adding fonts is a whole nother thing. If you want to make a custom font, let me know. First one to look at is font style. You bold it, italicize, underline, strike through, all lowercase, all uppercase, and small caps, where lowercase letters are still capital letters, but they're smaller. We also have font size. Font size I always set to auto size. There's really not a big reason not to. You have to set the minimum and the maximum and some other settings. I kind of ignore these last two. The min will be 10, and the max, in this case, like the max is 90, but I think 80 probably works for a good max. Let's look back at the game window real quick and turn off gizmos. I feel like this logo is maybe a little bit too big. Let's try 60. Yeah, I think that's better. You'll notice it's aligned to the left. That's one of the settings down here, alignment. Let's set the horizontal alignment to center and the vertical alignment to middle. That already looks a lot better. And then we have a vertex color here. I can click this to change the color of the text, or I can click color gradient. And then there's a few options here. Single, horizontal, vertical, and 4 corners. Let's try vertical gradient, where we have the top color and the bottom color. Let's set the bottom color to gray. It's already looking a lot better. And you know what? Let's actually bold it. And then there's other settings too. If I scroll down here, we have the face, the outline, the underlay. These are actually settings for the material for our text, which means changing these will change all of our text, just so you know. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but whatever. Let's do outline, which thickness is by default 0. Let's increase it. Way too much. I actually don't like how that looks. It's like taking over the text. Let's try underlay instead, which is like shadow stuff. Offset Y, let's do negative to put a shadow under our text here. And then let's make it a little more opaque. I like how that looks. Let's go back up to the last couple settings. We have our spacing options here, like our character spacing, our word spacing, our line spacing, and our paragraph spacing. You should play around with those, make sure your text looks good in its context. Last setting is actually the first one, the text. Right here it says new text. We don't want it to say new text. We're gonna say the name of our game. I don't have a game right now, so we're gonna say the game name. And just like that, we have a logo for our game. Not really a very good one. Let's do small caps. That looks definitely a little more fancy. And I kind of want to move it up a little bit actually. So instead of 0.6, 0.7 for the Y anchors, let's do, 0.6.8, let's do 0.6. Whatever. Okay, it's now 0.7.9 if I meant to say. We got this here. This looks good. Let's do the start and quit buttons now. I realized when I made these, I actually made them text. We don't want them to be text. Let's delete those. We're going to make buttons actually for these. So I'm going to show you how to make clickable buttons. With our canvas selected, you can either hit the plus button or you can right click the canvas. But you're going to do UI button Text Mesh Pro. You see at the bottom, there's this thing that says legacy. These are all the old text and button stuff before Text Mesh Pro became the default. They should really just get rid of them. But anyways, button Text Mesh Pro, we're going to throw that in. So there's a button here now. We're going to call this one start. And now what we want to do is fix the anchor stuff so it's in the middle of the scene. We don't want this one to stretch out like our title. We just want it to be in the middle. So we're going to keep the X anchor at 0.5 here. But our position X, let's set it to 0 so it's in the middle. And our width, let's make it bigger. Let's make it like 350. And then our height, let's make it like 100. No, let's make it 80. No, let's make it 50. Okay. And then let's do the position Y right here. I'm just going to drag it up a little bit. I feel like this is a good spot. Let's click on the arrow here and go to the text TMP object that's childed to the button. I want to look at the structure here real quick. This button has an image component and a button component. The text is actually coming from a Text Mesh Pro that is childed to it. So here is where you might want to change the text. We're going to change this one to say start. And then I'm going to change a few settings here. Let's do the auto size for the font. Let's have a maximum of 30 and a minimum of 10. Let's bold it. Let's see how it looks in here. It looks really odd because of the shadow. Remember I said earlier the shadow is global. If I go down and I remove the shadow, it removes it from both parts. So let's keep the shadow but change the text to be a different color besides gray. Again, that's a vertex color right here. We're going to do white, which sounds odd, but we're actually going to take the button and make it a different color in a second. But first, let's do that, yeah. Let's click on our start button, the actual button itself, and the image component. Let's change the color to just something lighter like that. That looks a lot better if you ask me. Okay, this is good. Let's copy our start button and make a quit button. And the quit button we're going to do is open that up, and the Text Mesh Pro object that's childed here, we're going to call this one quit. And we'll see that it takes up exactly where the start one was because we didn't move it yet. Let's move the whole button down a little bit. And this looks good. Now, it's not perfect. In fact, I do kind of want to move this down a little bit to make it fit in the frame better. This is a good starter like layout. But what happens if we change our screen size to something maybe unexpected? Notice that the game name's kind of safe, but every time it gets smaller, it's like kind of threatening to cut off these buttons here. One thing that we should do is we should set our game to scale with the screen size. On your canvas object, in the canvas scalar component, there's a UI scale mode called constant pixel size. You almost never want it on this because when you play with a screen that's much bigger, it's not going to scale correctly. So change it from constant pixel size to scale with screen size. And then we give a reference resolution, which I always set to 1920 by 1080. You'll notice that this looks a little tiny here now. We're going to have to adjust our thing a little bit now. All we really need to do in this case is just make the maximum font size a little bigger. I'll do 100 for the game's logo. And then the start and the quit button, I'm shift selecting or control selecting to select both at once. I'll make them both wider. I'll set the width to 600, and both taller. I'll set the height to 150. Yeah, and then I'll space them out a little bit. No, 150 is too big. I'll do 100. And then space them out a little bit. It looks small, that's just because the text is small. So let's control click on both Text Mesh Pro objects and then set the max size to be 50. Just like that, the game looks how it did before. But now you'll notice that when I change the aspect size, the buttons actually scale with it. So there's no possible way they'll get cut off anymore. It looks a little odd, but we're never going to play with something with anything like weirder than 610. And we'll see in a full HD display and a 4K display, it looks the exact same because it has the same ratio. It's just different sizes. Okay, let's see. Was there anything else that I wanted to do with this? One more quick thing is the start and quit buttons are kind of annoying because they should be horizontally aligned, like they're right next to each other. But like we don't want to accidentally move the start button like that. So what I'm going to show you really quickly how to do is create a layout group where you can have multiple buttons aligned either vertically or horizontally. In our scene view here, let's our start and quit, we're going to select both of these and then right click and click create empty parent. This is going to create a game object that is the parent to both of these. And we're going to call this buttons. This buttons object is now the parent of the start and the quit button. What we're going to do is this buttons object, we're going to add a component to it called a vertical layout group. You'll see the quit button shifted a little bit. There's a few settings here. Control child size, use child scale, and child force expand. I recommend playing around with these in different capacities, but we definitely want both of these checked. We're also going to check both the height ones, and we'll see that they now are touching, which we don't want. So let's do the spacing option here and set it to 25. And let's do 50. Now, why do we do this? The start button and the quit button now have these locked values here. We can't move them, which is good because we want them to be vertically aligned and locked together. I can only move them as a whole now. And if I resize my buttons like group, both buttons resize with it perfectly. And I can add any number of buttons and they'll all perfectly go inside. Well, not if there's that many of them, but you get the picture. Okay, let's actually add functionality to our start button now. We're going to do a little bit with scene management, a little bit with Unity events. So what we need to do now is make our first script of the video. Now, I'm not going to assume you know anything about scripting. We're going to start from scratch here. So there's two ways to add a script. You can right click down here and click create mono behavior script, or you can on the object itself click the add component button and then type in something that doesn't exist yet, like start menu button, and then you can click create. I don't recommend doing it this way because this is going to create a script directly in your assets folder, and a well-organized project should have a scripts folder, and it should go in there instead. And an even better organized project should have a different folder for each member on your team, and each one of those should have subfolders like the scripts folder and sprites folder. So we're going to create our script directly in here. So we're going to right click, create mono behavior script. We're going to call this start menu methods, and press enter. Once this finishes loading, we're going to open it up in Visual Studio. I started doing it right now, but you'd probably wait till it finishes compiling scripts. And we're going to start writing a little bit of code here. We're going to create a couple of functions or methods that run code when we press the buttons. We want one of them to open a scene and one of them to quit the game. Okay, I was going to switch back to Unity, but it's taking forever. Okay, there it goes. So if I click the start button here, you'll see that there is a component called button, which has a few settings here, but the important one is on click, and it says the list is empty. The quit button also has this. This is called a Unity event. And when you make a public function or method in another script, you can plug it into the Unity event and call the function and run all that code when you press the button. To show you what I mean, let's go back to this start menu methods thing here. And we don't want void start or void update. Void start runs code when you start the game, and void update runs code every frame. But we don't want either of that. We want code that runs when we press the button. So we're going to delete both of these and make a public void called start. Oh wait, no, we can't call it start. The other one's called start. We'll call it start button. And then we'll make a public void called quit button. Now, what is a void? A void is where you write your code pretty much. You could write something else besides void, but I'll get to that in another video. All the code that you put in these curly brackets is going to be part of the method or function, whatever you want to call it, and will be called or invoked or executed when the function's called. Going back to some code from earlier, you would probably want to put code that sets things up in a start function, like setting the player's health, teleporting enemies to their default position, stuff like that. And code that should happen every frame, like updating physics and checking for collision, should probably go in void update. These voids are called automatically at the right time, but our voids are going to have to be like customly called through the Unity event. But first, let's give these functionality. Let's do the quit button first, because it's the easier one. All you need to do to quit a game in Unity is write application.quit, like this. I used Copilot or IntelliCode or whatever to help me finish writing that. I expect you'll be doing the same thing. This is, again, while I'll be going kind of fast. If you need to practice your typing, you should do it with a typing website. It's definitely better times to practice than following along with a video that's already going to be kind of long. Application.quit is another function. If we control click it, we can try to see a little bit about it if it wants to play nice. It calls another function called quit zero, which we don't really get to mess around with, but it does some cool stuff. Anyways, my point is, this one single line of code ends the game. Although this isn't going to do anything in the inspector. Before we do start button, let's actually get the quit button set up. Now, for a Unity event to work, what you need to do is attach the script to an object and then plug it in. So let me show you what I mean first with an existing one. If I go to my start button here, the on click Unity event here, I click the plus button. Let's drag in the image component. And then where it says no function, click on image. We see a whole bunch of things here. Whatever one of these we click on and set up is now going to happen when we click the button. So let's do one that we can easily see the results of. Let's do string name. No, let's do sprite. So now there's a little box here for the sprite. I'll click the circle here and click the check mark button. Now when we click the button, it should change the images component, which the current sprite is the UI sprite. It should change it to the check mark sprite when we click on it. We can actually add multiple events. Let's add one more. We're going to do the same object. We're going to edit the rect transform component. And it has let's do string name and change it to hi. Now when we click the button, it should change the sprite to a check mark and change the object's name to hi. Let's play the game and test it out real quick. I clicked the button, the object's name got set to hi, and it got changed to a check mark. That's all cool, but we don't want to do either of those things. We want to start the game. Let's do the quit button really quick first, because we have the code set up for that one. Our script that is the start menu functions needs to be attached to an object. So let's attach it directly to our canvas by dragging it on like this. It doesn't have any settings, so we didn't set any up, but we will in a minute. On our quit function now, or button, we need to click the plus button here to add a new event to the Unity event, and then drag our canvas object into here, because that's the object with the code we just added. Now we'll click no function and see start menu methods at the bottom, and we'll see quit button and start button. We want to attach the quit button here. Now we've correctly attached our code to our button. Let's play the game and see what happens. You'll notice that it does nothing. You can't quit the game from the editor. So let's add a little debug log to make sure it actually worked. Above application.quit, we're going to write a line of code that says debug.log, and then parentheses quotation marks, we're going to say quit the game. Since we can't end the game in edit mode, we'll see if this line of code runs by seeing if our message got printed. The debug log code throws messages into the console. This console is where all of your messages, errors, and warnings will go from playing the game, and it should be used the first thing you check when your game has a bug in it. So let's hit the quit button, and we'll see that a little message got printed that says quit the game, which is exactly what we want. We know for a fact the button works now. Let's do the start button now. This one's a little bit harder, because what we want to do here is we want to load another scene, and we don't have another scene to load. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about scenes. Scenes are like different levels or like windows, whatever in your project. Think about like you put a different menu in a different scene, like a start menu scene and a shop menu scene and a settings menu scene and stuff like that. You'd also have level 1, level 2, level 3. It just lets you separate parts of your game out that shouldn't be like in the same like area. So in our scenes folder here, I'm going to right click and click create scene and call this level 1. We're not going to put anything in level 1 because that's not what this video is about, but we are going to use it to test our start button. Now, if I double click the scene, you'll see there's absolutely nothing in it because we just made it. So let's just keep it how it is and go back to our sample scene. Let's go into our start menu code real quick here. In the start button, we're going to write a function to load the scene that we just made. So to do that, we write scene manager, which is part of the scene management namespace. Namespaces organize code into basically different folders, and when you use a code from a different namespace, you've got to tell it that it's from that namespace. So when I press enter here, it's going to automatically add this line of code to the top that tells it we're using code from the scene management namespace. So here it says scene manager. We're going to say dot load scene, and then parentheses and quotation marks, the name of our scene, letter for letter, word for word, same capitalization, everything, which in this case, we called it level 1 with a capital L and a space between the word level and 1. Now, when we run this code, it should load the level 1 scene. Let's go back to Unity, and before we test it out, we have to go to our buttons, our start button here, and on the onClick Unity event, click the plus button, and then drag our canvas object in like before, and then click Start Menu Methods, Start Game. Here, Start Button. Now both of our buttons have functions plugged in. Let's play the game and see what happens when we click the Start button. We get an error in our console. Let's switch to the console window so we can view it. Scene level 1 couldn't be loaded because it has not been added to the active build profile or shared scene list of the asset bundle has not been loaded. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if you click File, Build Profiles in Unity, it's going to take you to this scene, or this screen, or this window, whatever. This shows you build information about your game, including what device you're building for. Is it Windows, Mac, iOS, Android? Do you have any special settings? Like, is this a development build? Do you want to compress things? But the big thing that the build profiles have is a list of scenes. In this case, the only scene here is our sample scene, a built-in one. So let's click Open Scene List, and then go to our project and drag in our level 1 scene. Now both of these are here. Let's close this and try it now. Let's click Start. And we see that after a very small delay, it loads level 1 scene, which is perfect. It's exactly what we wanted. This button now works, but it could be better. This button loads level 1 scene, but what if we make level 2? Well, then we got to make a public void called like load level 2 or something. And then we got to write this very repetitious code where we copy and paste the existing thing here and make another one. And we don't want to do that. Because if an error happens with this, then it's going to happen with this. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to generalize our code a little bit. Start button here has parentheses. Inside these parentheses, we can add an argument or a parameter. Think of it like an input to the function. Something that we can tell it when we call the function that can make the function different every time. We want to be able to specify when we call the function what scene we want to load. So we're going to write string scene name. A string means that the user is going to be able to enter in a word, not the player. When I say user, I mean the person making the game. And you'll see where this gets done later. String is like words and text. If I did float, they'd be able to enter a number. If I did bool, they'd be able to enter a true or false value. What we're going to do here is instead of level 1, we're going to replace that with scene name. And then we're going to go back to our game, or in Unity. And on a start button, you'll now see that it says missing because we changed the signature. A method's signature has to do with whatever inputs it has, what its name is, if it has any outputs, stuff like that. Since we changed it, we have to click on it and reassign it. We'll see now that it says start button string. This means that a little box appeared here that wasn't there before. We can now enter text in. We want to enter the text, which is the name of the scene we want to load, which in this case is level 1. But if we added more levels to our game now, it'd be super duper simple. All we need to do is change level 1 to level 2. Don't have to recompile the code, don't have to check for errors, nothing. It'll just work as long as it's in the build profile. Whenever you have a function like this that has at least one setting you can add, you should do it. In the other videos, we talked about adding settings to your scripts, like a walk speed and a run speed, stuff like that. You can do that for your functions that are meant for Unity events as well. And as long as you put it in the parentheses, and there's only one thing you're putting in there, it'll be just fine. If you add more stuff in here, like a float delay or something, it's actually not going to work inside of Unity. Unity events can only support one setting or input. This works. We're basically done with the video. Two more things I want to show really quick is buttons actually have, or UI elements actually have a component called shadow you can add. And literally all it does is it adds a shadow It takes like 2 seconds to add and it makes it look a little bit better. Now, do I want to see every single one of your guys' games have a shadow in it? No. But if you were planning on adding a shadow or think it adds polish to your game, you should definitely add the component. Again, it takes 2 seconds. Next thing I want to do is we want this to work with controllers as well. Imagine your player is playing the game on a gamepad and they press the up and down button to try and select the button. It's not going to work because none of the buttons are already selected. I can't go down from the current button if there is no current button. That's a really easy fix. In our event system, which gets added whenever we make a canvas, there's an option called first selected. Let's take our start button and drag that in. Now, when we start the game, you'll see the start button has a little bit of darkness applied to it. That means that it's being selected right now. If I press down, the quit button gets selected. And now with one of these selected, I can press the enter key to activate it. And that's all for the video. This is a basic working start menu. We've got a logo, which is text. We've got 2 working buttons. I hope this video helped out. After watching this video, I would go ahead and watch the pause menu one if that's up by then. And yeah, thanks for watching.